Welcome to Economic Frontiers, the podcast that dives deep into the economic issues impacting everyday Americans. I'm your host, and today we're tackling a topic that affects every single one of us every time we shop, work, or simply try to make ends meet. Our episode today, Economic Predators, Corporate Greed Exposed. I'm thrilled to welcome Linda McElroy from the Fair Society Foundation, an organization dedicated to fighting economic inequality and corporate exploitation. Linda, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's crucial we have these conversations about how corporate greed is systematically draining money from American pockets, especially when so many families are struggling to keep up with rising costs.
Let's start with what we're seeing across America. Prices have skyrocketed for essentials like groceries, housing, and healthcare, yet corporate profits are at record highs. Can you explain what's happening?
What we're witnessing is a massive transfer of wealth from working Americans to corporate shareholders and executives. The data is striking. Corporate profits reached record highs in late 2023, with many major companies reporting profit increases 5 times faster than inflation. Take grocery prices, for example, which have risen by 25.6% since February 2020. That's higher than overall inflation, which was 21.6% during the same period. Yet these companies aren't just passing along higher costs. They're actively padding their profits at consumers' expense.
So this isn't just normal inflation or supply chain issues that companies talk about.
While supply chains did face legitimate challenges during the pandemic, corporations have used these disruptions as cover to jack up prices far beyond what was necessary. PepsiCo's CFO openly admitted that even as inflation was dropping, they would keep their prices high. They hiked prices by double digits and announced plans to maintain those inflated prices throughout 2024. Their competitor, Coca-Cola, did exactly the same, claiming they had earned the right to push price hikes because their sodas are popular. This isn't market forces at work. It's exploitation of market power.
I've also noticed products getting smaller while prices stay the same or even increase. That shrinkflation phenomenon seems to be everywhere these days.
Absolutely. Shrinkflation is a particularly insidious form of price gouging. Companies reduce the amount of product while keeping the price the same or even raising it, hoping consumers won't notice. It's happening with everything from cereal boxes to toilet paper rolls to ice cream containers. According to our research at the Fair Society Foundation, this practice has accelerated dramatically in the past 3 years, particularly in processed foods, household goods, and personal care items. It's a hidden price increase that doesn't show up in the official inflation numbers, but takes money directly from consumers' pockets.
Let's talk about corporate monopolies and consolidation. How has this contributed to the problem?
Corporate consolidation is at the heart of this crisis. When just a few companies control an entire market, they can dictate prices, wages, and conditions with little accountability. Let me give you some concrete examples. In the grocery sector, in nearly 40 metropolitan areas across America, Walmart sells more than half of all groceries. In the meat industry, just 4 companies control 80% of beef processing, nearly 70% of pork, and almost 60% of poultry. This extreme concentration gives these companies enormous power to set prices.
And that concentration seems to be getting worse with all the mergers we're seeing.
Exactly. The proposed merger between Kroger and Albertsons would be disastrous for consumers. Kroger operates 2,750 stores across 35 states under 19 different brand names, including Ralph's, King Soopers, and Fred Meyer. Albertsons operates another 2,273 stores in 34 states with brands like Safeway, Jewel Osco, and Vons. If this $24.6 billion merger goes through, it would create a grocery behemoth with unprecedented market power, allowing them to raise prices even higher while claiming they're still competitive.
Beyond just higher prices, what other impacts does this corporate concentration have on communities?
The damage is widespread. When big corporations dominate a market, local businesses can't compete and are forced to close. This hollows out communities, destroys local jobs, and leaves people with fewer options. These monopolistic corporations also have enormous political power. They spend millions on lobbying to ensure regulations favor them and to block any attempts to rein in their abuses. They extract wealth from communities while giving little back.
Let's switch gears to talk about worker exploitation. How are corporations using their market power to suppress wages and exploit workers?
This is one of the most disturbing aspects of corporate consolidation. When just a few employers dominate a local job market, workers lose bargaining power. Companies can suppress wages because people have fewer employment options. According to research from Columbia University's Human Rights Institute, a staggering 6.3 million U.S. workers have incomes below the federal poverty line. That's $14,580 for an individual and $19,720 for a family of two.
That's shocking, especially in the world's wealthiest nation.
It truly is. And it gets worse. Employers are engaging in widespread wage theft. In 2019 alone, U.S. employers stole $9.27 billion just from workers earning less than $13 per hour who were subject to mandatory arbitration agreements. These companies actively suppress unionization efforts through intimidation, surveillance, and even firing organizers. Amazon's warehouse workers, for example, are twice as likely as other warehouse employees to be seriously injured on the job, and the company has repeatedly fired union organizers like Connor Spence, who was terminated after organizing a walkout.
We're seeing similar patterns with gig workers too, aren't we?
Absolutely. Platform-based work is exploding, but it's typically characterized by precarious employment, low pay, and non-existent benefits. About 14% of gig workers earn less than even the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour, and 30% need to enroll in food stamps to survive. Companies like DoorDash use opaque payment policies that leave workers uncertain about their earnings, and they regularly change algorithms without explanation, often resulting in lower pay. They classify workers as independent contractors to avoid providing benefits or job security, all while exerting significant control over how and when they work.
What about immigrant workers? They seem particularly vulnerable to exploitation.
Immigrant workers face some of the most severe exploitation. They make up disproportionate shares of low-wage essential jobs. 42% of home health aides and 27% of personal care aides are foreign-born. Yet these jobs pay far below the national median wage. Undocumented workers are especially vulnerable because they fear deportation if they speak about abuses. They're often placed in the most dangerous jobs with inadequate safety protections. In 2023, nearly 6 out of every 100,000 foreign-born Latinos suffered fatal workplace injuries, compared to just over 3 out of every 100,000 workers overall. Of workplace deaths among foreign-born Latinos, 37.5% occurred in the construction industry.
These statistics are truly disturbing. We're about halfway through our conversation, and I want to pause to emphasize something important. This isn't just about abstract economics. This is about real people struggling to feed their families while corporations enjoy record profits. Linda, how does this corporate exploitation affect everyday Americans?
The human cost is enormous. Families are forced to make impossible choices between paying for food, medicine, or rent. People are working multiple jobs, yet still can't make ends meet. The psychological toll of constant financial stress affects health, relationships, and overall well-being. And it creates a vicious cycle. When people are living paycheck to paycheck, they have no financial cushion for emergencies, no ability to invest in education or home ownership, nothing to pass on to their children. Corporate greed is stealing not just money, but opportunity and dignity from millions of Americans.
What solutions would the Fair Society Foundation recommend to address these problems?
We need a comprehensive approach. First, we must strengthen and enforce antitrust laws to prevent harmful monopolies and break up existing ones. The Biden administration has taken important steps in this direction by suing to block the Kroger-Albertsons merger and challenging Amazon and Apple for anti-competitive practices. But we need to go further. The Federal Trade Commission should adopt stricter merger guidelines and aggressively investigate price gouging.
What about worker protections?
Workers need stronger legal protections and enforcement. We need to raise the federal minimum wage and index it to inflation. It's been stuck at $7.25 since 2009, which is simply unlivable. We need to strengthen the National Labor Relations Act to make it easier for workers to organize without facing intimidation or retaliation. And we need to properly fund the Department of Labor so it can effectively enforce existing wage and hour laws and workplace safety regulations.
Some critics might say that these regulations would hurt businesses and slow economic growth. How do you respond?
The evidence simply doesn't support that claim. When workers earn living wages, they spend that money in the local economy, creating more demand for goods and services. When markets are truly competitive, businesses innovate and improve efficiency rather than relying on exploitation for profits. Look at countries with stronger labor protections and more competitive markets. They often have stronger middle classes and more sustainable economic growth. What hurts our economy is the extraction of wealth from communities by monopolistic corporations that then hoard that wealth or distribute it to shareholders rather than reinvesting it in communities.
What can individual consumers and workers do to push back against corporate exploitation?
While systemic change is essential, there are actions individuals can take. Support local and independent businesses whenever possible. Join or support union organizing efforts in your workplace. Contact your elected representatives to demand stronger antitrust enforcement and worker protections. And perhaps most importantly, stay informed about these issues and talk about them with friends and family. Corporate power thrives in the shadows. Bringing these practices to light is the first step toward accountability. Are there any success stories or models we can look to for inspiration? Absolutely. The recent wave of successful unionization efforts at previously union-resistant companies like Starbucks and Amazon shows that worker power can prevail even against corporate giants. Communities that have passed strong local minimum wage laws have seen improved economic outcomes without the job losses that critics predicted. And the Biden administration's aggressive antitrust enforcement shows that political will can make a difference. These victories should inspire us to keep pushing for change.
As we wrap up, Linda, what's your message to listeners who are feeling the squeeze of rising prices and stagnant wages?
Remember that what you're experiencing isn't inevitable or natural. It's the result of deliberate policy choices that have favored corporate power over people. But that means we can make different choices. Economic rules are created by humans, and they can be changed by humans. Join with others in your community to demand an economy that works for everyone, not just those at the top. Corporate greed has drained our pockets for too long. It's time to build a fair economy where prosperity is shared by all who contribute to it.
Corporate greed has drained our pockets for too long. It's time to build a fair economy where prosperity is shared by all who contribute to it. Linda McElroy from the Fair Society Foundation, thank you so much for this illuminating conversation about how corporate greed is affecting everyday Americans and what we can do about it.
Thank you for having me. These conversations are vital for changing our economic system for the better.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of Economic Frontiers. If you found this information valuable, please share it with others who might benefit. And join us next time as we continue to explore the critical economic issues shaping our world. Until then, stay informed and stay engaged.